Today we have Mr. Eric Lim, co-founder of Somnus Sleep Wellness. Eric is a certified mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher and a recipient of the Young Model Caregiver Award by AWWA, as well as the Social and Health Manpower Development Program Fellowship from the Ministry of Health.
Sleep debt doesn't work in a very transactional way. It doesn't mean that, okay, if every night I lose 3 hours of sleep for over a period of 5 days, I'm going to put in 15 hours of sleep on Saturday and Sunday to catch up. Unfortunately, the body and mind doesn't work that way. What's more important is really to observe, right? Is that something that is helpful for us?
So what do you think about how we are as a society when it comes to our sleep health and patterns?
Many people are very much not satisfied with their sleep. But the challenge is, interestingly and also ironically, people are not doing anything about it. So on one hand, we feel like, we are not getting enough sleep, and also partly contributed by our very hectic, busy culture where we also prioritize efficiency. Right, we want to get as much work done, right, in our work day, and somehow this also applies to our personal time as well, right? Like, as I wind down for the day, how can I make the best use, right, of like the remaining 4 hours of my waking moments in my life, right, to be as efficient as possible, right, to pack as many maybe leisure activities, right, for example, watching Netflix, right, or reading a book that can kind of stop us or rather delay our bedtime in itself.
How would you persuade Singaporeans to avoid that and prioritize their sleep?
That's a tough question. Persuading Singaporeans, not an easy task, is it? But I think it is fair enough to say that it is socially acceptable, right? And even like normal to feel the need to kind of reclaim back of our personal time, right? Especially when we work so hard, right? In the day for meetings, meeting clients, right? Doing our work, right? That is needed to put food on the table, essentially. So sometimes, we might find that I really want to reclaim back my personal time, after work. There's this phenomenon called revenge bedtime procrastination.
Yes.
Right? And I think when we come from that standpoint, a question to ask ourselves is that healthy? Right? At the end of the day, is it meeting our needs? And is it aligned with the values that we hold dear to our heart? So I think this is really interesting, right? For us to really take a back seat and reflect, to see what is really important to us and to become more aware in a compassionate way, to observe what is it that we are doing to ourselves that actually gets in the way of the values that we hold dear.
It's very interesting that you mentioned, when we think of sleep, we always think of it as a very medical thing, very science-based thing. So having said that, before we dive into, your area of expertise, which is mindfulness and sleep, what is the price of poor sleep, you think?
It's definitely one that is not healthy for both the body and mind. I think first and foremost is in terms of the body, it affects our cardiovascular health, right? It actually puts us at higher risk of cardiovascular diseases. At the end of the day, this price that we are paying with poor sleep or even insufficient sleep, it all comes back to, are we aware of what is it doing to our body and mind, right? And in terms of like how we feel the next day, right? Some of this cost or this price that we pay is definitely a reduced reaction time, right? So the next day we wake up, we might feel like we are slower to respond to things, right? Our sustained attention would be not as ideal, right? So we find that we are less able to stay focused on tasks that requires our attention. And I think emotionally, you might also find that we are less patient. And I noticed that for myself, right? When I was caring for my dad, especially getting shorter hours of sleep, I'll notice the next day I'll be less patient with him. As much as I would like to be very patient and be kind and to really take care of him as best as I could, but not getting that sufficient sleep or even having that fragmented sleep, right, really got in the way of me really being the best that I could possibly be.
How can people learn through mindfulness, to stop their mind racing at night? What kind of strategies can they use right before they hit the bed?
I think one very helpful mindfulness practice that our workshop participants, our clients find useful is this practice called the body scan. So essentially it is a practice where we can intentionally direct our attention to the different parts of our body. So we are actively redirecting our focus into, first and foremost, beginning with our feet. How it goes is something like this. So I'll say Now I invite you to bring your attention towards your toes. And
Okay.
just kind of just allowing yourself to feel into what that feels like.
Right.
Right, in your left foot and your right foot.
Right. Maybe I should try that.
Yeah. Maybe you could just do that. Just a very brief body
Okay,
scan.
sure.
Right?
All right.
So this body scan practice can be done either when you're lying on your bed, or you could be seated on your bedside chair, and really just allowing yourself to sit comfortably or lie comfortably. And if it feels right for you, you can choose to allow your eyes to gently close. And just beginning by taking in 3 beautiful deep breaths.
Five minutes later.
And allowing your eyes to gently blink open. And if you like to, bring a nice warm smile on your face.
Oh my God, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And
You're
that
welcome.
is a full body scan, and it didn't even take that long.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like maybe about 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So, is this something that everyone out there can do at any time of the day, or
Yes.
any
yes.
time of the day?
So this is a very accessible practice, right? That with awareness, with intention, we can choose to even schedule it into our calendar.
Right.
Right, as regular pauses, right, that we can allow ourselves to check in with the state of the body and how that feels like, and even becoming aware of the state of the mind, whether is it in a conducive state for us to take on, to be ready for what's coming up for us.
Yes.
And just curious, how was your experience?
I have to say, I was just going to say, I feel different. That 5 minutes, it brought attention to parts of my body that I would normally not think of, So like it really is a full body scan. And I think by the time we got to the head, the mind, I was really like, it feels different from maybe 20 minutes ago, more alive now, but more relaxed. Could you share more about what is sleep hygiene, and how can we implement it on a daily basis, and how does mindfulness play a part in that as well?
I think first and foremost, sleep hygiene is really a set of practices and habits, right, that we can allow ourselves to set up this environment, right, for us to get better sleep at night. For example, if we find ourselves struggling with using our phone too much, right, before bedtime, what a good sleep hygiene might look like is that we might choose to notice, okay, to what time do I want to stop using my phone? And intentionally allow ourselves to bring this phone away from the bed itself, right? So this limits that distraction, right? Because once we see it, we might feel very tempted to take a look, when there's a notification that comes through on our phone or when the phone lights up.
I see. In Singapore, having said that, to set aside that space and time, but, in Singapore, we do live with our families. A lot of us do live with our families. We have siblings in the same room, or, we sleep with parents in the same room because, of our spaces, right? So how do we ensure that everyone's on board?
Yeah, I think that's a real practical concern. Right, especially in a very land scarce country like Singapore, where our living arrangements could be quite diverse, right? And sometimes we might need to live with more people. How we can get everyone on board is really to respect everyone's different sleep needs. Some of us might go to bed earlier, some of us might go to bed later, and I think it's important to have that very honest conversations as to what this sleep arrangement looks like, right, within the family in itself. Right, and to realize that maybe for the husband it is going to bed at this time, right? For the wife, maybe her body clock is more aligned to being a night owl, for example, and that means that she might go to bed later, right? So how can we begin to accommodate and respect each other's sleep needs and preferences? And having this very open, honest conversation allows that opportunity to de-conflict. Right, because sometimes we might get frustrated, right? For example, you're already sleeping, and then maybe your spouse comes in and then makes a very loud noise, right? And then you find yourself awakening from your sleep itself, and that can feel quite frustrating, right? So I guess like being more aware and attuned to each other's sleep needs and preferences in a kinder way can potentially help to mitigate some of these challenges.
Right. So basically, it's really important to have that conversation, to prioritize what you need for your sleep
Yes.
and to have that conversation with your family members. Right.
Correct.
You mentioned earlier, some of us are night owls and some of us are early risers, right? What do you think about that sleep pattern? If you're a night owl, you tend to sleep at 2, 3 and maybe wake up a bit later. Is that at all detrimental to someone, or should everyone stick to a particular schedule, like go to bed at a proper time?
This is a bit tricky to answer. Why I say that is because it's also a function of the culture that we are embedded in, right? And I guess in Singapore, when we begin to figure out, what this ideal sleep duration is we often hear it from our loved ones or friends or family members that, hey, you need to get 8 hours of sleep, but that's not really true.
Ah, okay.
Right? So there is a guideline, right, from the National Sleep Foundation. So for individuals, I believe between 18 to 65 years old, the guideline is between 7 to 9 hours of sleep, right? And this hours of sleep is really the sleep opportunity. So it's not the actual hours of sleep that we get,
Right.
because it's really hard to enforce that.
Right.
Right? What's really important is, can we give ourselves that opportunity for sleep to happen? Right? So if let's say we are cutting short, we sacrifice our sleep, that means we have lesser opportunity for the total sleep that we can have for ourselves.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it kind of differs based on our individual needs and also the life stage that we are in as well. So what's really important is to see these numbers as a guideline rather than as a rule, right, that we need to stick to very strictly. Because when we do that, then we might be setting ourselves up for disappointment, especially when we don't get that.
Right. What advice, would you have? Speaking of sleep patterns, right? I think one pressing need is new parents, young parents, who have newborns at home or toddlers at home waking up in the middle of the night. How do you think they can start to adjust their sleep schedule to suit the needs of their children?
Thank you for that question. I find that very relating from my past experience, right? So all along, I always believed that I cannot function or stay awake after 11 p.m. at night. Something changed. When my son was born, I realized that my body and mind could adapt to this new journey of parenthood.
Wow.
I guess that's a superpower that moms and dads have, right? After the birth of a child. And it made me realize that both our body and mind is incredibly resilient and adaptable to changes. It knows what to do. It knows how to adjust so that we galvanize our innate resources to support our child, especially in the early few months of first few years of the developmental stages. So when we begin to allow ourselves to adjust our expectations, right, that, maybe initially we might have an expectation that I need my 8 hours of sleep. But now as a new dad, as a new mom, I begin to tailor and adjust my expectations to that of, okay, maybe I will be getting lesser sleep. I may be getting maybe less of that continuous sleep through the night because perhaps I need to wake up to feed my kid. I need to wake up to support my spouse.
We do this like napping, right? We always have this thing that, okay, maybe Monday to Friday we wake up early, we go to work. And then Saturday, Sunday, we try to, catch up on it or make up for that sleep that we lacked throughout the week. Does that actually work?
You want an honest answer?
Yes. Afraid to ask, but does it actually work?
Catching up on our sleep during the weekends is better than not having done that. Especially if we have been subjecting ourselves to lesser sleep during the work days, especially from Mondays to Fridays. That's possible, right, for us, but it may not completely restore, right, whatever sleep loss that we have put ourselves through. Sleep debt doesn't work in a very transactional way. It doesn't mean that, okay, if every night I lose 3 hours of sleep for over a period of 5 days, I'm going to put in 15 hours of sleep on Saturday and Sunday to catch up and feel as well refreshed. Unfortunately, the body and mind doesn't work that way. So I think what's really important is, while there is this need or feel like there's this demand, right, to play catch up with our sleep during the weekends, What's more important is really to observe, right? Is that something that is helpful for us, right? Does it really meet our needs?
Coming back to still sleep hygiene is, when we lie awake sometimes, when we go to bed, right? We do everything that we can, right? But when we lie in bed and we are like, oh my God, I only have like 3 hours to sleep, or I have 4 hours to sleep, and then you panic and then you get anxious. What can we do in that duration to actually go to sleep instead of lying awake and stressing about it?
I think the first thing is to recognize and become aware of what of these unhelpful mental habits are we engaging in. So one thing that you mentioned earlier, it could be worrying about not getting enough sleep. Especially if, let's say, we have been lying in bed for already 2 hours, right? And it's like maybe 3 a.m. in the morning and we know we need to wake up the next morning for work. And because of that time pressure, because we have lesser sleep opportunity now, we might feel even more stressed, right? More hyper aroused to that extent. So one thing that can help is really to see with clarity what is it that we are running through in our mind.
So what inspired you to pursue a career as a sleep wellness coach?
And this happened when I was in my final year as an undergraduate studying psychology in NUS. And that was also the time that my dad fell ill. So he suffered a stroke. And that was the first time that I realized that I have to be his caregiver. And I was really not prepared for that, right? Because I think all along, I never imagined myself to be a caregiver. When my dad had a stroke, it was really challenging, right? Because he became less able to be himself as a result of the stroke. So kind of like subsequently 2 years after that, he developed a total of 3 strokes and subsequently also vascular dementia. So I thought that was really the pivotal moment in my life where I find that my sleep got affected as a result of caring for him. So what happened was when my dad developed vascular dementia, he was very much disoriented to the day and night. And that meant that it would also impact my sleep. I could still remember vividly at about like 12 midnight, he would call out my name. He would go like, Eric, 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 Eric. I realized that I was becoming sleep deprived as a result of attending to his needs. Not because, he wants to call out my name at that time, but he can't help it as a result of his condition. So that made me realize that I really wanted to learn, how can I help people to sleep better even while managing some of these life challenges that could be unexpected.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing. That's really interesting. And maybe if you could share about Somnus Wellness as well. Earlier you mentioned that, there's the art of sleep and you combine science as well. So maybe if you could share a little bit about that.
It's really fulfilling, like for myself and also for my co-founder, who is Dr. Julian Lim. He used to be a professor with Duke NUS Medical School, and also now currently a adjunct professor at NUS. And I find that what's really exciting is how we pair both our expertise together, where he comes from the place from science, right? So he has been doing like academic research in the area of sleep. And for myself in the area of mindfulness. That's how Somnus Sleep Wellness is born. So I think what we would really love to do, right, at Somnus Sleep Wellness is really to make sleep health more accessible, to teach people like the skills and the knowledge, right, that we can implement in a day-to-day basis. So that sleep becomes something that can amplify our superpower, right, in developing better relationship with our loved ones to be more productive at work.
Thank you so much, Eric. I think everyone has learned a lot about sleep health today, and I hope each and everyone has a takeaway. So, and to our listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode of Open House. And remember, for every question you have, there's somebody who can answer it for you, like Eric here. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review, and share it with anyone who might benefit from our discussions. You can also follow us on our socials. And see you next time.